Recently, I've been working on improving my studio setup, making it more organized and creating systems so I can work smarter, not harder. In this video, we're going to continue that trend into the house on a big project I've been putting off for far too long. We're also going to be revisiting embedding steel into 3D prints to make them stronger and giving our furry friends an upgrade while we're at it. Let's go check out the project so we can show you what's going to happen. This is the space we refer to as my shipping station. If you've ever ordered something from me or I've shipped you something, it originated right here at this desk. You want to get down, I got it. It's a total ADD disaster zone doom box laid out on a desk here. This is meant to be the space where mail comes in and gets sorted and packages get organized before they head to the studio, or I ship out packages when I get orders on my shop, hotrodhippie.com/shop, by the way. But the way my brain works, it always just ends up piled up with stuff. We need to create a better organized system here. So it's going from this to this way more organized setup. The concept here is simple. We're keeping the bones of what we had, getting rid of the clutter. We're going to be keeping the desk and the printers. The packing materials will get up off of the desk surface, as will the iMac. It's going to get lifted up so we can make maximum use of that desk space. The small Ikea drawer unit, that's going away in favor of a large Ikea shelving unit that will store my inventory and my supplies, as well as giving us an area to hide this litter box that we are tired of seeing at the end of all of this here. We're going to Ikea hack it into that shelving unit. So let's get going on this project. Now, of course, any revamp project begins with cleanup. I've got to clean off the mess on the top of the desk, out the drawers, get the computer out of the way, and then sweep up after myself and get rid of the mess that I had going here, or have my robot minions do it for me. I shockingly like to start any project like this with all the pieces in play. The more things are in place, the more I know what space I have to work with. I can measure off of things and move forward. The shelving unit we're going to be using is this one that I had in my old office space that's just going to get moved down to the first floor and put into the shipping station area. It's got all the space we should need and will fit pretty well in the other room. Since I want this thing to be how it's going to be so I can work around all the components I have to deal with, it's time to start the IKEA hack portion of things. What does that mean? Well, it means we're going to be putting the litter box that was next to the old drawer unit inside of this cabinet. Of course, there's going to need to be some access going on here. There's an outlet directly behind this shelving unit, so I'm going to cut a hole in the back side of that so that I can still access the plugs there and have some hidden wiring. I just transfer the measurements of where the receptacle is located on the wall to where it'll be relatively on the shelving unit, and I can cut that out. Of course, with a litter box inside of the cabinet and doors closed on it, how are the cats going to get to that thing? Well, that's where another hole comes in, this time in the side of the cabinet, away from the shipping desk where you won't see it as much. I'm going to have a trim ring printed and enclosed around the opening that I'm going to cut in the side of this, so I made a template off of that piece that allows me to trace out where I need to cut a hole in the side of this and drill the holes for mounting. A Forstner bit and a jigsaw later, and we'll get a hole into the side of this cabinet. Of course, I don't want my animals scraping themselves along a freshly cut opening in the side of this thing, so that's where in comes the trim ring that's going to go around the opening, aka the poo portal. This isn't the first time I've created one of these. I used to have a hole in a door in my last place where the litter boxes were inside of another room, and I called that the poo portal as well. It's actually one of my earliest 3D designs. For safety's sake, I need to anchor this whole shelving unit to the wall, to the studs behind it. However, because of the baseboard trim behind it, it's spaced just a little bit away from the wall. I'm going to be using these 4-inch lag screws that I used for the recent studio revamp, and these printed spacer pieces that I made to go behind the unit and act as a washer on the inside of the unit. Now with this securely anchored to the wall, I don't have to worry about it toppling over in the middle of the night while one of the cats is using the litter box. That would be an awful evening for them, I'm sure. Now, you can still see the litter box, and that is a problem. We need doors on here. Unfortunately, IKEA doesn't make short doors for this setup. They only make big, tall ones. So I bought one of those. I'm going to hack it into 2 smaller doors. quick tip for you. You'll see me use painter's tape all the time in my work. I use it a lot when I want to mark something, but I don't want the mark to remain on the material or have to clean it up afterward. With my marks laid out on the tape, I can cut down this single 90-inch door into a pair of 25.5-inch doors, making sure to use a higher tooth count saw blade so I'm not tearing the heck out of these doors, despite the fact that they're Ikea, so the inside is basically just cardboard, but the way it's going to be oriented, you won't see that cut off end. There is, of course, one glaring flaw with this plan. That is the lack of a second hinge location once I cut the door down. Now, obviously, Ikea never figured on this, so I had to mock it up on the cabinet using the one existing hinge location so I could then mark where the second hinge needs to go on the door. Then I have to pull out a specialty tool, which thankfully is not expensive, the Craig Concealed Hinge Jig tool, which will allow me to locate and then drill another pocket for another hinge into this door where I need it to be, giving me the freedom to then get these installed onto the shelving unit so I can close up the doors and hide away that litter box. We don't have to look at it and hopefully contain some of the smell between cleanings on this. Oh, and of course, give our furry friends a little privacy when they're using the restroom. That done, we can move on. Now we need to talk about embedding into our 3D prints. But first, a quick aside. You might have noticed that the shipping station is a sit-stand desk that I only ever stand at because there's no chair. Our friends at FlexiSpot reached out and they want to remedy that. They sent over their new C7 ergonomic chair and sponsored this video so I could show you folks more about it. Let's get this thing out of the box. Plenty of us are spending a lot more time in office chairs these days, and if you haven't experienced the difference between your cheap chair you've been using since college and a quality office chair, I cannot express enough how big of a difference it can make. The FlexiSpot C7 is no exception. It is a comfortable mesh design chair with a ton of adjustability built in to suit your needs. There are 7 points of adjustability on this one chair. The armrests can tilt outward and inward by 15 degrees and slide forward and back to suit your seated position. The seat base that I'm sitting on can slide forward and backwards 60 millimeters. The built-in lumbar support has detent-free adjustability where you can lock it in position for your needs. The entire seat base can tilt forward and backward to adjust your hip position. There's of course the ever-standard height adjustability of any office chair, a height adjustable headrest with pivot, and you can adjust the recline position of the backrest. I've personally found that using a good quality ergonomic office chair can make a world of difference to my daily aches and pains, and this chair immediately feels like it's going to do even better than ones I've tried in the past. I'm pretty tempted to replace all of our office chairs with these. My chair has a mesh bottom, which I like for breathability, but you may prefer a foam one, which is also available. The FlexiSpot C7 comes with a 10-year limited warranty, and you could find out just how comfortable this is by checking out the link in the description. They have a 30-day free return policy, so you could try it out, see if it fits your wants, needs, and sleeping habits. I'm having a hard time not falling asleep filming this video. Check it out at the link in the description. Thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Now let's go embed some steel into a 3D print. I forgot, use code C730 to save $30 off your order of a C7 chair today. Okay, now back to the project. I've done this previously here on this workbench. I have 40/40 extrusions at each end that are mounted to steel brackets embedded into a 3D print. You can see that whole project in this video. This time around, I'm way more prepared and it should go a lot better than it did the last time. First things first, I designed my parts and got them laser cut by Send Cut Send well in advance of this project, so I was ready to roll when it came time and I wasn't hand making them again. Due to their thickness, 3/8" steel, I did have to deburr them myself, unfortunately, but a little bit of time with a die grinder and a Dynafile later, and I'm ready to roll. I threw a coat of self-etching primer on because folks kept complaining that I didn't do that last time. I'm really not worried about these things rusting inside of the prints, but it's not going to hurt by any means. I sent these parts to printing. I'm using Polymaker ASA. Thank you to them for providing the material. And I just print until it's ready to pause at the proper height for our pocket that our steel is going to be dropped into. With the steel in place, it's back to printing. And now this design is much more intentionally designed for 3D printing, with only straight bridging sections going over the gap over top of that steel. We're not really printing on the steel, we're printing over the steel. There are a couple of reasons for this. One, printing on the steel really isn't going to go well. Our print material's not going to adhere well to this. Second one is we don't want to drag our nozzle on the steel. This is designed to have just the ever so slightest gap above the steel so that as the print bridges over top of it, it'll sag down onto the steel, but we're not dragging our nozzle across steel. Wouldn't be very good for it. And a short time later, I have 2 failed prints. Neither one of which is the fault of the fact that I'm printing over steel, but like, my luck is not great on this project. I don't know why, but the one that was printed on the Bamboo X1, immediately over the bridging section over top of the steel, it started to separate and the layers were splitting. It just did a terrible job of printing over top of that steel, and it's gonna have to get broken apart and just, well, here, watch. I can separate it pretty easily here. Peel this out, get the steel back out of this piece so I can reuse it. Well, there it is. But then the one printed on my Voron 2.4 was printing significantly better. And I just figured, okay, I'll print both of them on the Voron. These are like 13-hour prints, so it's gonna take a lot longer than I wish it would, but I'll get it done. But I ran it out of filament. My 2.4 has become the machine I use the most, and the one project I really need to get to on it is putting a filament runout sensor on it. I just don't have the time because it's the machine I use the most. I need to, again, salvage the steel out of inside of this print, which this printed a lot better over the steel, so that's really going to be annoying to get it out of here. I'll have to break it, maybe hammer it apart, but it'll work. There were some print quality issues in the Voron one because I didn't dial in my print settings well enough for the overhangs within this design. The gussets have a fair bit of overhang angle to them. I need to slow down the speed as it's hitting those angles, and I didn't tune that in well enough because I was more worried about getting the print done quickly. I'm going to go send this back to print and set it up properly this time. It's going to take a little bit longer, but at least I'll get the final result I need. And a fair bit of print time later, I have a pair of printed brackets with steel embedded inside of them. I think they have a pretty darn good look to them. They still have issues. The one printed on the Voron still had some of the overhang speeds not dialed in quite well enough. And the one printed on my Bamboo X1, which I did go back and print on again, once again has a layer separation issue. I don't know why that is, but the screws that go through this will suck the entire part together, so I'm honestly not too worried about that. There are a handful of other printed parts that are coming into play here for mounting various components, like getting the iMac up off of the desk, etc. But we need to build the structure that they're going to mount to. The stuff it's going to mount into these big brackets that have the steel embedded into them. So for that, we have to head to the workshop side of the studio. And of course, we're going to be using a maker's best friend, aluminum extrusion. 40/40 in this particular case, which I will cut down on my chop saw to the size that I need, and then I can tap the ends of these for M5 hardware. With our riser uprights properly prepped, it's time to put them into our printed parts with a little percussive persuasion. These were designed to be a tight fit around the extrusion, so it would be well supported. To permanently install the uprights, we'll use M5 screws through the print and the steel into those holes we already tapped. The rest of the holes in the print will get some M5 roll-in T-nuts. These are great for installing into extrusions after you've started to assemble something. They can be installed very easily. They just literally roll into the V-groove in the extrusion. A quick tip, the way I like to align them with holes like this is a pair of hex wrenches, one through the hole I'm trying to line up with, and another one to push the T-nut down to it. I want to try and repair the bad layer adhesion on the bamboo print, so I'm going to use a scraper to spread the gap to be a little wider, and then take an acetone-soaked rag and drip it into the opening. You can actually hear right there the sound of the internal structure cracking apart as the acetone eats at it, but this will weld it back together once we clamp it after it has a chance to break down the material. This works because these are printed in ASA. Both ABS and ASA can be gas smoothed with acetone. It will actually break down the material, melt it effectively, so you can use it as a glue since it'll melt both sides of a joint. You can smush them together and they'll glue back together, or you can use it to smooth out layer lines on a print, but of course, it's a hazardous chemical. The result isn't perfect, I wouldn't sell it to somebody, but for a functional object I just need to work, I'm good with it. With that welding done, the extrusion was able to be installed into here, and I have an almost complete upright. There is one missing component here, and that's another piece of steel. You might have noticed earlier, but I had extras of these. It's because I designed them for two purposes. One, obviously to embed in the prints, and a secondary purpose was to go on the back of the extrusion to actually sandwich the desk top and act as a clamp bracket. I'll show you how that works once we get it installed, but it just bolts onto the backside of the extrusion for now. I mentioned earlier the computer's going to mount up off of the desk, and that's where this bar comes in. We've got both of our uprights. One's going to be at each end of the desk. This bench isn't big enough, so let's move back here. The way this longer extrusion goes between the two of these is these little shelf 90-degree brackets that I made. They are already installed at a height that I think might be where I want. I'll have to adjust, I'm sure. I can rest the extrusion on top of these. Once the extrusion upright is in place, a second one of these will come from the top and sandwich it in place to keep it from rolling or pivoting at all. And with that, the upright is largely assembled, enough so we can finally get it onto the desk. The new assembly sits on top of the existing desk, and once positioned gets clamped in place so it can be screwed down with these washer-headed construction screws that'll be plenty strong to hold this in place on this desktop. The deeper hole in this gusset was designed specifically with this long Torx bit that I had in mind so I could reach the fastener. Then the other side mount is second verse, same as the first. Leaving us with a really solid, like more solid than I anticipated, riser setup. The desk is wobbly, but it's a cheap desk, that's why it's relegated to this purpose. Now it's time to handle my packing materials. To pack orders, I use tissue paper to wrap the items individually, and then this bamboo expandable paper to act as padding inside of boxes. You notice in Ruby's sketch, these are mounted to the left side of the desk. So off camera, I assembled this 2040 and 4040 extrusion bracket setup, which will provide more stability to the overall uprights and also mounting points. Earlier, I used a PVC cutter to cut some conduit I had left over from another project, and that'll function as a roller holder for the roll and the tissue paper here. And as we're coming down the home stretch, it's time to get the iMac mounted back to the desk. There is no VESA mount on here, of course. What we're going to use is a bracket that I don't love. It's kind of hacky, but it grabs onto the stand and makes it a VESA mount. Now when it comes to actually mounting the iMac, it's fairly heavy, but I'm not worried about what monitor arm I'm going to use like this one here because I'm not going to. I designed some fixed mounts. These accept some M5 heat press inserts, and then they will be affixed to the crossbar on the desk rigidly. They're not going to be moving, not going to be changing. I can change the angle of the iMac through its own stand and the height via the height adjustability of the desk. Installing the iMac onto its mount is really freaking awkward, but it was totally doable. With the computer in place, it's time to finish up the home stretch of projects to get this whole thing wrapped up. Like these clamp brackets that I talked about earlier. They're going to provide a little preload, a little clamping force at the back edge of the upright just to reinforce it from the underside of the desk. An M5 screw screws up into a shoe that puts pressure and clamps it to the desk. As this whole project is about maximizing the space, I'm going to be adding a shelf and a keyboard tray so I can clear up even more desk space. So I routed off a piece of whiteboard and stained it to better match the desk. With a couple coats of polyurethane on them, they were ready to be installed on top of the desk for the shelf and underneath of it for the keyboard tray. Of course, no desk project would be complete without way too long spent on cable management. I 3D printed a handful of cable management zip tie holders that were able to be installed to the extrusion of the riser setup, which was really helpful above the desk surface. And then I 3D printed and used some of my own VHB tape cable management pieces underneath the desk to get it all tidied up so it just has a single wire going to the outlet, and that is it. Next, it's time to turn some attention to the shelving unit. I designed these divider brackets, which with a couple of pieces of laser cut wood will provide me some organization on the top shelf of this whole setup for my shipping boxes. These will give me places to put the different sizes of boxes that I use, lean them up so I can visually see them and quickly grab whichever ones I need. A few more of those laser cut pieces combined together to create a organization divider system for storing my inventory of brackets that I sell on the Hot Rod Hippie Shop. And they also label each location so I can quickly and easily open the drawer and grab whatever ones I need for an order. The last thing to organize is my mail. So I designed and printed these semi-modular stackable paper trays that I can mount to the extrusions, or they have multiple mounting options, holes at various places, where I'm putting them on the extrusion stacked on top of each other so my mail can be forgotten about in an organized manner. And after putting some odds and ends back, I present to you my shipping station. Is my new shipping station perfect? By no means. Am I absolutely thrilled with it? Yes. Now I have an actual system in place here. My shipping process should be significantly faster and smoother. Sure, one of the dividers for the boxes did fall over, and I realized that I don't have as many boxes in stock as I thought I did, so I have to restock supplies now. But now I can just open one drawer on the shelving unit and access my inventory and the business cards and things that I might throw into a shipment right here, ready to roll. I can grab the items for an order, grab the boxes without moving a single step, and then go to the desk. Grab some packing material right off the roll and grab a piece of tissue paper to wrap things up with. It's all just right here at my hands, at my fingertips, and ready to roll. And very importantly, our furry friends are already making use of their own private restroom space, and we're gonna probably implement a similar thing in another room in the house for another box. I even managed to get some of my favorite prints onto the shelf just to have a nice display, something to cap things off with. Oh, come here, by the way. Little behind the scenes thing for you. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. That C7 chair from FlexiSpot, that is not staying at the desk. It is too nice. It's moving in here to the studio where I'm going to use it as my daily driver chair because I like it that much. Not just because they sponsored this video, thank you to them for that, by the way, but I legitimately find it comfortable and think it's going to be great for my back. If you want to pick up one of th30 chairs, use code C730 at checkout and save $30 off your order today. And with that, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up with this one, folks. I really am so happy with the way this turned out. It improved our home. It's going to improve my workflow. I just need to see about getting some merch in stock so I have more things I can ship out to you folks. Definitely look out for announcements on all my social medias when that is ready to roll. Hope you found this interesting. If you did, maybe you'll enjoy this video where I use 3D printing to help me build my ultimate desk, or this one that YouTube thinks is best for you. Thanks for coming around, folks. Get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. See ya.